Hi, I'm Louise Broekman, and I'm here spending time with a wonderful entrepreneur and friend, Ben Carter. Welcome, Ben.
G'day, Louise.
Yeah, and today we're going to be sharing, I guess, some thought leadership and your insights into advisory boards. So, Ben, do you mind sharing, I guess, to start with, a bit about your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I guess my entrepreneurial journey actually started non-entrepreneurial in that I did a graduate degree in mechanical engineering and went and joined a global air conditioning company. Went through their training program, wanted to work my way up into the upper echelons of management in that business. And I guess what I found over that journey of 11 years with that company, my first company in the industry, was that bureaucracy and good decision making don't go hand in hand. And basically, the business as it grew and as we were acquired by another company, totally changed, and it became an environment that was not working. So I finished up in my first 11 years with a global manufacturer of air conditioning equipment. Went and did a deal with ANZ Private Equity to run a contracting business in Queensland, mechanical contracting, so putting in large air conditioning systems into high-rise buildings and shopping centres and hospitals and things like that. And that deal was all meant to be part of, I guess, my first foray into having an equity stake in business. Anyway, joined that company as their general manager, and 3 months later the GFC hit. The valuation of that company didn't really work, and it went from an equity play to a save the company play. So I spent 3 years, working for ANZ Private Equity in an air conditioning business called HVAC in Queensland. And basically it became about rebuilding the business and trying to get a platform for it to grow into the future. So through that experience, I got a lot more, my eyes opened a lot more to how running a business works and pitfalls and traps and tricks. And probably about 6 months before I finished up there, I decided that I wanted to go and venture out into the wide world myself in my own gig. And so I sort of started looking around to see what was available. And believe it or not, the opportunity came from an unlikely source that my father-in-law was 65. He had a little business called Enertech Australia selling air conditioning and electrical products up into PNG. And I thought, he wanted to retire. His likelihood of selling the business was quite low. And so I come up with a deal with him over a Sunday roast to buy the business off him and turn it into, an air conditioning, contracting service and automation. It's like a building controls business.
Fantastic. And how long have you been in business for now, Ben?
Yeah, so that was June 2011. So 8 and a bit years now. And a bit of a wild journey over that time. We've grown pretty quickly. So do you want me to tell you a bit about that?
Yep.
So basically went into the business Enertech Australia. At that time, there was a lot of oil and gas work going up in PNG. And through a contact of his in PNG, they reached out to myself, knowing my background, and said, are you interested in looking at this job in the middle of the jungle in PNG to air condition 20 buildings for ExxonMobil? I said, absolutely. And at that time, there was just myself and one other in the business. There was 2 of us. I had a little office out of Ipswich in Tivoli. And basically through negotiations with ExxonMobil and their representatives at Clough, which is a big mining company in Australia, we were able to negotiate a deal to do the job. And 3 months into my new career, I had a $20 million project in the jungle in PNG, which turned out to be a wonderful adventure.
Fantastic. And when you think about that, that was 2011.
Yeah.
You're now operating PNG Australia and New Zealand. Is that right?
Yeah, so since that point in time, we've expanded to have offices. We started off in Brisbane, we started off in Ipswich. We moved to Brisbane just to allow us to get more traction on the workforce, opened up to more availability. In 2012, I joined forces with a company called Value Added Engineering, or VAE, and halfway through 2012 came up with a deal to merge the two companies. So I actually bought them through an equity play. I gave them some stock in my company, and then took the unusual step of changing my company name of Enertech Australia to the Value Added Engineering Group, so VAE Group.
That's fantastic. Ben, can I just ask, how many people do you employ now within the business?
Yeah, so we've grown from 2 to, we've got just over 300 now. Operating Brisbane, Gold Coast, Townsville, Cairns, Darwin, up in PNG and in Christchurch in New Zealand, as well as now Sydney as well in New South Wales. So the expansion slowly filtering out through into other locations, and that's how I guess we've managed to increase our numbers that way.
It's fantastic. We're really proud of you so far, and looking forward to seeing what happens next for you. You've had an advisory board for your own business, and you've also been sitting on other people's advisory boards. Do you mind just sharing a bit of your experience around advisory boards?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in the early days, so when we sort of grew from a couple of people up to about 50, I was using different people in different stages of that growth, more in a mentor or coaching role. And then in 2013, we sort of hit a plateau with probably around 70 staff, 75 staff. And we were really now then getting into a size of business that I hadn't run before, and neither had any of my partners. So that was kind of, where we'd been to. And we felt that to, I guess, help navigate the things that we didn't know, that we needed to maybe formalise our advice structure. And so what we did is we basically brought an advisor in first up in 2014 onto our board and changed it into an advisory board to, I guess, allow that advisor not to have the legal ramifications of being a director. And that worked fantastically. So for the first 12 months, we just had one advisor on our board, and the experience and knowledge and information we gained there, I still use today. From that, we then basically said we need to formalise the advisory board. And so at that point, we got a chair. So I was lucky enough to pick up a chair who was ex-Leighton Holdings, a gentleman named David Hudson, who's still my chair 3 and a bit years later. And we went to more of a formal advisory board where we had the chair plus 2 advisors. And that really helped us break through, that sort of platform or plateau, glass ceiling we'd hit in 2014, which then enabled us to jump up and grow in 2015, 16, and then to jump up and grow to the size we are in the last couple of years. And so now that advisory board, we meet 8 times a year. We did meet monthly, but we found that was a little bit too taxing on the executive team. So we now do 8 meetings a year. Gives us a break between a few. And we've got 3 advisors and a chair, and then myself and the CFO also sit on the advisory board.
That's terrific. So Ben, when a lot of businesses start their first advisory board, they go for an independent chairperson, 2 external advisors, which is, I guess, the structure that you had earlier on in the piece. What's been the real benefit for you, do you think, and the impact your advisory board has had for you personally and for the business?
Yeah, look, well, the first and most obvious thing is it's really helped us to navigate situations that we've never experienced before, and particularly around strategy and structure around the business. I get a lot of really good advice in terms of that, which has enabled us to acknowledge when the business, as it's grown, when we need to make a structural change or a strategy change. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, by having those 8 meetings a year, it really holds myself and the executive team to account to get the action items at the end of the board meeting done by the next board meeting. This is the first item on the agenda, and our chair is very good at making us realise that we haven't done the things that we haven't done that we committed to do. So it really brings a discipline into the business about actually getting things done.
Yeah.
The third thing was it really enabled us to get a strategic document together that mapped out just more than 12, 24 months. So we've got, a 3 to 5 year plan now. And it's a professional plan with advice from a whole range of different people that have a lot of experience in the areas that we're now getting into, like, for example, mergers, acquisitions, HR, sales and marketing, for a large business. So that's another thing. And look, probably the other big thing from my perspective is the network. Each of those advisors is connected to, a massive network of people, not only through, Brisbane in my case, but throughout Australia. And then through their network, that's helped us to get into and navigate places like New Zealand's expansion, PNG's expansion, and navigating the whole tax and company setup over there. So, those are probably the key things that I can think of offhand, but without that advice and without that advisory board structure, I've got no doubt we wouldn't be anywhere near as successful as what we are today.
That's fantastic. And you also sit at the other side of the table as an advisor on other people's advisory boards. So, interesting perspective. So if I can maybe just wrap up and get your tips, what tips would you give other business owners, as well as what tips would you give other advisors?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest tip I would give is going to the advisory board, asking the questions of what you're going to do, not telling the advisors what you've just done. I see, like, on the couple of advisory boards I've sat on, I sort of get, this is what's happened retrospectively, where, the owners of those businesses then haven't been able to navigate a few pitfalls that they've got themselves into. Whereas if they had brought those issues up before making those decisions, then I feel they could have probably in some cases got better decisions, or more rounded decisions. So, for me, definitely going down that path is a big thing. Having good reports, that give a snapshot of where the business is at. I know we're not a statutory board, but advisory boards need to have, a good understanding of the financial status of the business to give good advice. And also, I think the other big key thing I've really noticed lately is the board and the executive team. Normally the board doesn't sit on the advisory board meetings in some cases. And there's a real disconnect between, in a lot of cases, what the board really wants and what the executive team is telling you they want advice on. And so that's the big takeaway for me, is making sure that before you start your advisory board process, that the board, CEO, CFO, or whoever else is in that executive team are all aligned on what the strategic direction they want to take the business is. And, whether they want equity, whether they want income from the business, whether they want growth or sustainability, because quite often I've seen mixed messages coming out in what they're trying to achieve, and therefore then it's hard to give really good advice that relates well to that situation.
It's interesting because it does change too over time, so you've got to constantly recheck in on that too, because circumstances change. What advice would you provide advisors, Ben?
Yeah, that's a good question. Advisors, to have honest conversations is probably a good one. I can see in not only my advisory board, but advisory boards that I've sat on, that the people who come into those meetings, you know, extremely talented with such a wide range of experiences, and to speak up and not be worried about offending the executive team. You know, and I'm a bit worried about maybe I do that a bit too much in some of my advisory sessions, but look, yeah, you know, the executive team is there to get the raw truth of the situation, and if you think something's not right, say it. Whereas I think, you know, some advisors, particularly those who are new to being on advisory boards, might think, oh, you know, do I need to cotton glove this a bit, or, you know, just tone it down a bit? But from my perspective, as CEO, you know, I just want straight up, down, whether they think it's right or wrong. Because at the end of the day, it's my decision whether I take that advice or not.
Yeah, yeah. And it is different to a governance board, and when advisory boards are independent, the members, there is no hidden agenda, so there's no reason why they only want the best for you, don't they?
Absolutely. And, you know, and from my perspective also, if the executive team is getting advice that they don't think is good advice, then they need to rotate those advisors out.
Yeah.
And you'll find that the advisors, if they're giving advice and the executive team sort of disregards it, I'm not saying they don't have to follow it, but if they sort of don't even acknowledge the advice, then you'll find the advisors want to exit anyway.
Yeah. It's time, right?
Correct. And so it's kind of like in the early days with coaching, you know, once you've got all of the things from those coaches that you need to find a new one. And the same with advisory boards. And as your phases change, then, you know, I highly recommend you change out your advisors to suit the new situation that you're in.
Yeah, that's right. Still have the management discipline, but the voices can change, but the discipline maintains itself.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Ben, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's very generous of you, and I look forward to having another interview with you in 12 months' time and see where you are then.
No worries. Some exciting things happening at the moment, so I look forward to telling you about them.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. Bye.
Cheers, Louise. Bye-bye.